By the end of this video, you're going to know how to work with AI in a way that is safe. In other words, a way that safeguards your personal and private information. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and some habits that you should always follow. So stick with me. Boom shakalaka. My name is Greg Martin. I'm a medical doctor. I live in Ireland. I love teaching people AI skills. Invest time in learning AI and you'll get that time back again and again. At the end of the video, I'm going to demonstrate some of the features that I've been talking about during the video. So I'm going to bring you here and actually point you to some of my favorite language model features. Let's talk a little bit about what is happening with your data. When you type in a prompt or you upload a document, where's that data sitting? And it's important if it's personal and private information that you might not want other people to be able to access. Now, on the whole, there are some safeguards that are in place that AI companies have put in place to make sure that your data is kept secure. But there are some caveats, there are some loopholes, there's a couple of things you need to know and understand, and you need to get comfortable with your level or tolerance of risk in this space. I'm going to give you some information that will help you make those decisions. So when you've typed in a prompt or you've uploaded a document, that information is kept by the AI company for a number of weeks. It varies from one company to the next, but it's sitting there somewhere in the ether and it exists, and that's important, and you'll understand a little bit more about why that's important in a few seconds. Secondly, sometimes, and especially if you're on a free account, that data will be used for training the AI models, right? And even if you have a paid account, your data will be used for training AI models unless you switch that feature off, right? And in the free accounts, you don't get the option of switching it off. In the paid for accounts, you can usually, depending on the model, and you should go and check this, you can switch off the feature that allows them to use your data for training. And I'll show you at the end of this video exactly how to do that. And the reason it's important to not have your personal data being used for training is once it's being used to train a model, it is baked into that model in perpetuity. So even if the AI company says, well, look, we wiped the conversations clean and we haven't kept any of your data, blah, 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 the fact that it's baked into the model means it's there in some shape or form. And while it might be difficult, it is still conceptually possible for that data to be gotten at. And the reason why all of this is important is all companies have, this is banks, this is emails, but including AI companies, there is the possibility of data breaches, and data breaches could translate into your personal data getting into the hands of who knows whom, right? So, and once they've got your personal data, there's the possibility of them using that in a way to fraudulently pretend to be you or to access accounts of yours or to do. So it's just not worth that happening. Some personal information, it's almost impossible to keep that out of the AI if you're interacting with it regularly. But there's certain things like a password for anything, definitely don't ever put that into an AI. And you might be very cautious about information about your banking or your medical information, etc., etc. Other than data breaches, information could be subject to subpoenas that might vary from one country to the next, but there may be legal mechanisms through which information that is sitting in an AI server can be accessed under circumstances, and you might not want that to be a possibility. Now, some of the time you might be working with something, for example, like Claude Cowork, where all of the actual files are sitting on your computer and not in the cloud, but they're still being read by the AI. Now, the Claude Cowork only gets access to the folders and files that you give it access, but those files and folders are still being read, and the information that is there within is processed in the cloud on some server, some way, right? So it's not a completely secure way of functioning. Now, these companies do tell you and tell us that they've got filters that filter out anything that might be sensitive or personal. I get that, and I think that's great, and I'm glad that they do that, and I'm sure they're doing their best to do that. But the algorithms and the mechanisms whereby they do that filtering are not publicly available. So we don't really know the extent to which that is a fail-safe mechanism, and so it's still worth being cautious. The next area that I want to talk to you about in terms of AI and safety is this. If you're dealing with an AI, it comes across as an expert. And in a lot of ways, it has deep expertise and certainly will have access to knowledge and insights that we might not have. Here's the risk. If you're asking it for medical advice, legal advice, financial advice, it could get things wrong and you might make big life decisions based on incorrect information. Okay, here's how to manage that safely. Use the AI to help you better understand a situation, right? a big legal document, you might ask it to help you better understand what's in it, to look at it, to summarize it, etc., etc. But use the AI to help you have a better understanding of what's going on, and use that knowledge to then interact with a real human expert, right? If it's a medical situation, you can learn a lot about the condition using AI. That's a good thing to do. But you want to take that knowledge and information, and maybe even the questions that it suggests that you ask, and you want to take that all to an actual doctor or an actual lawyer or an actual accountant and get feedback from a human being, and then you will have the best of both worlds. You'll be going into that conversation with the human expert, but you'll be as well informed as you can. If it's a serious issue, you should not rely solely on the advice or an opinion of an AI. And following that, and I want to emphasize this, when it comes to your mental health, an AI is not a therapist. This principle is particularly important when it comes to people that use AI as their therapist. An AI is not a real therapist. It may be very empathetic. It may even give you some good advice. It may be a good life coach, and it might be a good mechanism to bounce some ideas around. But if you have serious mental health concerns or problems, you need to speak to a human being, and the AI should be flagging you and signposting you in that direction. If it doesn't, I'm telling you now, because I've worked in the mental health space quite a lot, make the effort to reach out to a human being, a therapist, and get help if you need it. This, of course, also applies to any emergency situation, any crisis, anything that is important in that sense. Get help from the emergency services if you need it. Don't rely on AI under those circumstances. A couple of other risks that I just want you to be conscious of when it comes to AI. AI is becoming increasingly good at being able to produce extremely human-like voices, human-like images, and send emails that seem to come from a legitimate source. These are all mechanisms that can be used by scammers. So you could get a phone call from somebody that sounds just like a family member, asking you to deposit some money in a bank account because they're stranded. And it might sound just like them, and it might even be interactive. You might land up having an actual conversation with somebody that you believe is a family member, and it isn't. This sort of thing isn't happening a lot, but I have no doubt that this is the sort of scam that's going to become increasingly important in the future, and we need to find ways to safeguard against it. And I think an important thing that we need to keep in mind is, and this applies, we've always known this about text messages, and you get a text message from somebody that's pretending to be a family member in another country, asking you to help them with some money. If there's a situation in which you're being asked to give money to somebody, always have that as a red flag. Always try to make absolutely sure that the person you're interacting with is in fact the person that you think it is. And you might want to, amongst your family, agree to a particular answer to a particular type of question. You know, in the way that you do when you're trying to log on to a web page and you can't remember the password. It sort of says, well, what is your mother's maiden name? Now, be careful about that, because remember, we've been talking about the fact that AIs have potentially got access to all sorts of information about us. So you might want to, amongst yourselves in your family, agree to a particular kind of answer to a particular kind of question that only you know about. I'm just making that as a suggestion. I think this is going to become increasingly important as deepfakes start becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Another risk that I just want to kind of flag, because I also imagine that this is going to become increasingly a problem, where people become over-reliant and over-familiar with AIs and start replacing normal human relationships with conversations that they keep having with AIs. In other words, you could be a teenager and you've got one of these very chatty, human-like, voice-sounding AIs that talk to you all day. They're going to always be empathetic. They're always going to tell you you're right about everything. They're always going to be interested in everything you say. Their content will be optimized around your interests. It will become increasingly easy just to fall into the trap of spending an enormous amount of time engaging with these language models. And you might find that under those circumstances, communication and contact and interactions with normal human beings becomes intolerable, and normal people seem boring and uninformed and unempathetic. This is not good. It is not healthy. We should not become over-reliant and over-engaged with AIs. These things are not people, they're not human beings, and we don't want them to negatively affect the relationships that we have with human beings. Another risk that I just want to also point out is we're increasingly moving into this world of agentic AI, where you can ask an AI agent to do things for you, to check your email or respond to emails. You want to step into that world quite carefully. In other words, you want to be very specific about what you give the AI permission to access. And when it accesses those things, you want to be very specific about what it can and can't do. I'll give you an example. I've used AI to read emails for me and even draft responses, but I've given it very clear instructions not to send any emails on my behalf, but to rather draft responses and put them in the draft folder. I will then review them and decide what gets sent and not sent. I've just done that a few times, mostly as an experiment to see how it works. I've not moved into kind of just letting AI kind of control my inbox. But increasingly, this is the sort of way that people are going to work, and I think we need to do that with a lot of caution, because the AIs make mistakes, and it's not ever going to be an excuse that, well, it wasn't me, the AI did it. I think we need to take responsibility for the extent to which and how it is that AI engage with the tools that we've historically been in control of. So here's a quick summary of how to use AI safely. Treat any information that you upload into an AI or put into a prompt as potentially publicly available. Use the privacy settings your tool gives you, including switching off using your data for training. Don't paste sensitive information into your AI, particularly things like passports, your ID, passport numbers, banking details, medical records, home address. Speak with a human being before acting on medical, legal, or financial advice. For mental health issues or crises, talk to a human being. It's the safe thing to do. Always be mindful of the possibility of deep fakes. Be mindful of the fact that AIs can hallucinate and provide information that is incorrect, but it does it in a way that's extremely confident. And don't become over-reliant on AIs for your interaction with the world around you. Engage with human beings, with people, and safeguard those relationships. Okay, we've talked about this in theory. I'm going to show you some practical ways of doing what I've just suggested, particularly with respect to switching off the option that allows the company to use your personal data for training the model. Okay, and I think that's quite important, particularly if you include sensitive or personal or medical or financial information in the chats. So let's have a look at how to do that. We're in Claude at the moment. I click on my little name there. I go into settings. I go into privacy. And if you scroll down, there's two options here: location metadata and help improve Claude. Allow the use of your chats and coding sessions to train and improve Anthropic models. You want that switched off. And if I go into ChatGPT, similarly, if I go into settings, and here I go into data controls and improve the model for everybody, turn that off. And that will protect you from your data being used as part of the training data that then gets embedded into the model, and it'll be there in perpetuity. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful. If this is your first time here, click on the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. Hit the bell notification for notifications of future videos. Put a comment in the comment section below with your questions, thoughts, etc., etc. I'll try and get back to those. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Don't ever change, don't do drugs, always do your best. Boom shakalaka.